Giordano Bruno history, burned alive by church, forbidden knowledge, heresy, philosophical martyr. He wasn't a soldier. He didn't start a war. He didn't assassinate a king. So why was Giordano Bruno burned alive? Because he thought differently. And in his time, that was the greatest crime of all. In 1600, in the heart of Rome, Bruno was led to the stake, mouth gagged, hands bound, surrounded by clergy, judges, and silence. His sentence? Thinking beyond the Bible. He dared to say, "The universe is infinite. Stars are other suns. Earth is not the center. There may be life beyond this world." But that wasn't all. Bruno believed in a divine force present in everything, not just in the church, not in holy books, but in nature, thought, movement, even rebellion. To the church, this wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. He wasn't just questioning theology, he was threatening the very structure of control. In part 2, we'll reveal what Bruno saw in the stars, and why his cosmic vision was centuries ahead of science, but unacceptable to faith. Giordano Bruno universe, infinite cosmos theory, church versus science, early astronomy, cosmic heresy, before telescopes, before Galileo, before science had a voice. Bruno looked at the sky and imagined infinity. He said the stars were not fixed lights in a dome. They were suns, like ours, each one possibly surrounded by planets, each planet maybe with life. And our Earth? Just one of countless worlds, not the center, not chosen, not unique. To the modern ear, it sounds visionary. To the 16th century church, it sounded like blasphemy, because if Earth isn't the center, then maybe man isn't either. And if God made infinite worlds, what happens to salvation, to heaven, to sin? Bruno's universe was vast, eternal, and alive. Not cold, not chaotic, but divine. He wasn't trying to destroy God, he was trying to expand him. In part 3, we'll uncover Bruno's mystical beliefs, his fusion of science and spirituality, and the ancient Hermetic texts that fueled his fire. Bruno mysticism, Hermetic philosophy, forbidden knowledge, spiritual science, divine cosmos. Giordano. Bruno didn't just look to the stars. He looked within. He studied ancient texts, writings older than the Bible, passed secretly among scholars and mystics. He believed in Hermeticism, an ancient system that taught, as above, so below. The universe is mind. God is not a ruler, but reality itself. Bruno saw no separation between science and spirit, no border between logic and the divine. He believed the universe was a living being, and the soul of man was part of that divine flame. In his view, to understand nature was to understand God, and to question doctrine was an act of reverence, not rebellion. But the church didn't see it that way. To them, Hermetic texts were heresy, a challenge to their monopoly on truth, a return to pagan wisdom. Bruno wasn't just proposing new science, he was reviving ancient power. And that scared the men in robes. In part 4, we'll explore how Bruno's ideas traveled across Europe, and how powerful institutions began to hunt him down. Bruno philosophy spread, church censorship, heresy suppression, forbidden books, Europe Inquisition. Bruno didn't stop with one book. He traveled, he taught, he spoke freely. From Geneva to Paris, from London to Frankfurt, he spread a message the church feared, that God is infinite, that the soul is eternal, that no one institution owns the truth. He challenged theologians in open debate, refused to back down, refused to be silenced. His books circulated underground, smuggled, copied, whispered. He attracted students, critics, and watchers. Because while Bruno gained followers, he also gained enemies. The church was watching, and it was patient. It couldn't silence him with argument, so it prepared to silence him by force. In 1591, he was invited to Venice to teach under protection, but it was a trap. Soon after, he was arrested by the Inquisition, and so began a 7-year trial meant to break his spirit and destroy his mind. In Part 5, we'll go inside Bruno's interrogation and see how, for 7 years, he faced every threat, but refused to deny what he believed. Bruno Inquisition trial, religious persecution, heresy interrogation, spiritual resistance, truth under torture, 1593. Venice turns him over to Rome, and Bruno enters the belly of the beast, the Roman Inquisition. For 7 years, he is questioned, threatened, isolated. His books are examined, his beliefs dissected. They demand he recant. His answers, cold, precise, unshaken. He refuses to deny that the universe is infinite, refuses to call his soul heresy, refuses to say that the church owns the truth. They lock him in dark cells, feed him lies, promise mercy, then threaten hell. But Bruno knows, truth doesn't change under pressure, and silence isn't the same as surrender. He tells them, "Perhaps you pronounce this sentence against me with greater fear than I receive it." Even facing death, he speaks with calm, with dignity, and that, more than his books, terrifies them. In Part 6, we'll witness the verdict. The church makes its final move, and Bruno steps into legend, with fire at his feet and truth on his lips. Bruno death sentence, church execution, burning heretic, truth versus power, final trial, February 1600. After 7 years of interrogation, the church reaches its conclusion. Giordano Bruno will die, but not quietly, not privately. He will be burned alive, in public, as a warning, not for murder, not for treason, but for thinking too much, too clearly, too freely. The sentence: "We condemn you as a heretic and commit you to the flames." They offer him one last chance: recant, submit, beg. He looks at his judges and says nothing, because the fire can consume his body, but not the truth he carried. On the morning of February 17th, he is marched to the Campo dei Fiori, mouth gagged, eyes open. He sees the crowd, the smoke, the wood. He steps into history. But this isn't the end. In Part 7, we'll explore what happened after his death, how his ideas survived, and how the very fire that killed him lit a flame that still burns today. Bruno legacy, posthumous influence, forbidden knowledge revival, heretic remembered, truth after death. The fire burned his body, but not his words, not his vision, not his truth. After his execution, the church thought his ideas would fade, be forgotten, erased. But truth doesn't die in fire, it spreads with it. Bruno's books resurfaced in secret libraries. His name was whispered in underground circles of thinkers, scientists, revolutionaries, poets. They saw in him not a heretic, but a prophet. In the centuries that followed, his ideas became foundations: the infinite universe, the divinity of nature, freedom of thought, unity of all existence. In the Enlightenment, Bruno was reclaimed. In modern science, he was vindicated. And in philosophy, he became a symbol, a man who said no to power and yes to truth. In Part 8, we'll reveal how Giordano Bruno inspired the rise of secular thought and how his vision shaped the future of science, philosophy, and spiritual freedom. Bruno influence Enlightenment, secular thought roots, science and philosophy, freedom, church versus reason, legacy of rebellion. Bruno died alone, but his death echoed across Europe, like a warning and like a spark. As monarchs fell, as churches weakened, as minds opened, thinkers of a new era whispered his name. The Enlightenment wasn't built in a day. It was built on sacrifice, on voices like Bruno's that refused to stay silent. Voltaire, Spinoza, Newton, Locke, each in some way followed his footsteps, not always in belief, but in courage. They too questioned dogma. They too put reason over authority. and they too faced threats. But the fire couldn't burn everyone. Bruno had shown the cost, and that made the risk worth it. His cosmic vision laid groundwork for science. His spiritual naturalism inspired modern mysticism. His refusal to bow became a template for every free thinker who came after. In Part 9, we'll explore the modern rediscovery of Bruno, his statues, his books, and his voice rising again, in a world still torn between power and truth. Bruno Modern Relevance, Free Thought Today, Philosophy Revival, Truth vs. Power, Intellectual Legacy. You can visit him now, in the center of Rome, at the very place where he was burned. A statue stands, eyes cast downward, mouth closed, robe cloaked like a monk or a warrior. It's more than stone. It's a reminder. Because Giordano Bruno was forgotten for centuries, his name erased from textbooks, his works buried. But the truth always finds a way back. In the 19th century, freethinkers resurrected his legacy. His books were republished, his story retold, his ideas re-examined, in philosophy classrooms, in scientific debates, in spiritual circles. His vision lives again. Why? Because the struggle between power and truth never ends. Today, we still ask, who owns truth? Who decides what's sacred? And what happens when one voice dares to challenge the rest? Bruno's life isn't just history, it's a mirror. In Part 10, our final chapter, we'll bring it all home, what Bruno means for us today, and how his sacrifice demands we think more, fear less, and speak anyway. Bruno Philosophy Today, why it matters now, freedom of thought, speaking truth, resisting dogma. It's easy to admire him now, to quote him, to build statues, but in his time, he stood alone. He faced silence, betrayal, and fire, because he chose truth over comfort and clarity over fear. Today, the world has changed, but not enough. Ideas are still punished. Truth is still dangerous, and those who speak freely still risk everything. That's why Bruno matters, because he reminds us that truth is not owned, that thinking is sacred, and that no institution, no tradition, no authority has the right to silence the soul. He said, "I fought, and I do not regret it." Now the question is, will you? Will you think deeply? Ask the questions no one wants to hear. Speak when silence is safer. If Bruno could die for truth, can we at least live for it? If this message moved you, share it, save it, question more, and never forget, fire can destroy a body, but it cannot burn an idea whose time has come.